Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today talking about the importance of writing in our classrooms. So let's jump into what teachers need to know about teaching writing. First, we really need to talk about the developmental stages of writing. Okay, writing is a learned tool. It's a natural progression that we'll see in humans that allows them to share ideas with others. So the developmental stages of writing starts with scribbling and drawing. I have a 3-year-old at home who has 2 older siblings. He is very much in the scribbling and drawing stage. I remember at the beginning of the school year, he brought to me a piece of paper that had a large mass of scribbles in the center, and he told me a story that he wrote. This is going to be the beginning of writing for kids. You're going to see it progress from there to recursive writing, where it mimics the loops that you'll find in cursive writing. It's going to form maybe from left to right. You're going to have lines of writing instead of just scribbles all over the page. From there, you'll see children transition into drawing. Now, this is all one stage. It's just a very large stage of development. They're going to start to draw pictures and tell you what the story is behind it. Then they'll add maybe some letter-like symbols above or below or next to their picture, which of course adds to their story and the meaning that it has. And from there, you're going to see them start to transition into the pre-phonemic stage of writing, which is really exciting because they're starting to learn that letters are part of our written language. It's important to understand, though, in this pre-phonemic stage that those letters are more just placeholders for the written word. They might not make a lot of sense. They could be backwards, but you're going to see things in lines. Words are going to be placed on top of each other because students haven't quite figured out you can do multiple words in a row. I remember when my middle child, my daughter, was in this stage, and it would take her an entire page to write maybe 10 words because everything was stacked up on top of itself. Not real words, but she thought she was telling a story, and she was extremely animated and excited when in this stage. She was just going into pre-K at this point, and it was really important as her parent and the adult influence in her life to show my excitement and to ask questions and be engaged whenever she shared with me something that she had written. From there, students are going to transition into the early phonemic stage. This is where you're going to see students understand how to use capitalized consonants. You may see 1 or 2 consonants together, but you're not going to have full words. It's really because students have not grasped that ability to hold words still in their mind as they look at them. Even when they copy a word, it's not all going to be copied completely. There's still kind of letters are acting as placeholders until they get into that letter naming stage, which is characterized by the use of more than 1 or 2 consonants and at least 1 vowel. They're really grasping. It's important to understand that this developmental stages of writing is dependent upon, too, their phonemic awareness, right? And having an understanding of our verbal language. And it's definitely complemented by reading. Studies show that students become stronger readers when they learn to write with their language as well. So all of this needs to coincide with writing and verbal language at the same time. So in this letter naming stage, you're going to notice students are really trying to spell things out phonetically. Probably only 1 vowel, maybe 2. More than 1 consonant can be next to each other, but it might be a short stage depending on when they grasp this, the time of the year. Do they have a break between the end of one school year and the next year? That's definitely going to dictate how fast these stages transition. But your goal is going to be for students to get to the transitional stage. That's where they're going to start to understand the conventions of their language, that we write left to right. You can have multiple words in one line. You're going to put spaces between words. They're going to understand the use of commas, plural words. They're still going to spell things phonetically. They might not have a full understanding of maybe the different letter combinations that make the sound, but they're going to have a grasp of phonics, and they're going to try to put that in place in their writing. It is really important that we need to mention that as educators, we cannot push students through any of these phases. We need to support them and encourage them, identify where they're at, and support them as they're continuing on through this. And that's going to allow us to have a bigger influence on their writing capabilities if we understand the developmental stages of writing and we can support them where they're at. So as we're teaching students to write, it's important to use scientific-based information. And the Oregon Department of Education and some of its teachers from Beaverton, Oregon, did a little bit of research based off of some information, some research that was actually completed in the 1970s by Paul Dietrich. He wrote a book called Measuring Growth in English, and teachers in Oregon used his information and did a little bit of extra research on their own to figure out a useful writing model that could help propel students forward in their writing capabilities and ultimately lead to them being successful readers and writers who can convey their message. And our goal as educators is to create successful adults who can write, reading and writing, but writing grammatically correct with conventions and organization is a measure of success and often dictates the type of careers that students can have. And so, as difficult as writing can be, if we use this 6 trait writing model and evidence-based teaching practices, then we can really ensure that our students have every opportunity afforded to them because we taught them the skills that they need in order to be successful in life. So the 6 trait writing model is obviously broken into 6 different categories. We're going to touch on each of them briefly. And of course, you can always send me questions if you need assistance in any area. And you can look up this information on the World Wide Web if you feel like you need additional information. So we have ideas and content, organization, and voice. Those are our first 3. Ideas and content, I like to think of this as how are you preparing your students? What is the assignment for the writing task? And are your students clear about their purpose? So if they're clear about their purpose, they understand the task, then their ideas and content are going to be clear and concise. It's going to be full of examples, facts, and details. If your student has a full grasp of ideas and content, then they are going to be able to successfully write something that's clear and concise and leaves the reader with a good understanding of their purpose. And adding on to that, it's really important that students can organize their information in a way that's easy to read. So this is going to involve transitions, having a clear beginning, middle, and end. We also want our students to have a good voice that's unique to them, and we really want to allow them to develop their voice. But it also needs to be appropriate to the audience and topic. The other 3 components of the 6 trait writing model are word choice, sentence fluency, and conventions. Each of them are really important and kind of involve each other. This is going to be where you're going to make sure that you're teaching your students vocabulary. You have a word wall visible so students feel like they have many options for word choice. Help them identify different ways to write sentences. They need to be easy to read. That goes back to clear and concise. And then conventions of spelling, grammar, and punctuation. This may seem like a lot of information, but this is what writing is this is how writing is graded, is through the use of the 6 trait writing model. Now, you cannot, in one single writing assignment, focus on each six of these, all six of these. That is way too complicated and you are going to overwhelm your little kids' brains. So as you teach writing and make it a part of every day, you're going to want to focus on one of these components and allow it to build upon itself throughout the year. Uh, and that's going to allow you to be a more successful writing teacher. And if you pair this with evidence-based teaching practices, then it's going to ensure that your students are not only good writers, but they also enjoy it and find value in it. So research shows us that students need time to write every day. So even if you took a week and had a week's worth of writing prompts and maybe just short prompts, but focused on a different writing model practice each day, you could show your students different things to consider as they're writing. And if you use a grading rubric to grade their writing, to show them how they're scoring in each of those categories, then students are going to feel more motivated and understand where they're at and maybe where they need to be. And of course, all of this needs to be done in a way where you're encouraging them. We don't want to use, we definitely don't want to say a student we don't want to give them an F, say that they're failing at this. We want to definitely talk in positive language and encourage a growth mindset, helping students understand that they can be successful in writing. And by doing this, we're teaching them an understanding of the writing process. We're also allowing them to learn spelling, handwriting, keyboarding. It's important that we emphasize these things throughout our classroom on a daily basis. We provide them with an opportunity to practice keyboarding, especially with all of the technology that is afforded to this generation. And ultimately, as we're presenting writing to our students, we really need to be encouraging and create an engaging writing community. That means we need to have fun with writing. We need to provide them with an opportunity to get creative and write things that matter to them. We need to show them the power behind writing. And as teachers, if we can just weave it in to our lessons throughout the day and make it a very natural way of learning, then students are going to be way less resistant to it. You're going to see them scoring high marks in the 6 trait writing model, and it's going to lead to a classroom flourishing with excellent writers. So let's talk about maybe those students that struggle with writing. Scientists say that around 20 to 30% of all students have a form of oral language deficit, which can have a huge impact on learning to write. So our goal with any type of intervention is, of course, to move students back down to tier 1. And it can be done through early and effective interventions. And that's why it's also really important for us to understand the developmental stages of writing. It's important for us to understand a child's background. We need to know what language is spoken at home, and if that language is spoken fluently, what type of book options the students have at home. All of these things are important so we can really understand our student and know how to help them. In addition to knowing the student, there are other things that we can do, such as quick writes and POW plus tree. Quick writes are a really great way to get your students writing every day. A teacher traditionally is going to pose a question to students and then ask them to write for 10 minutes. And this is how I would start it at the beginning of the year, just quick writes. But as you progress throughout the year, you're going to want to encourage students to learn how to organize their thoughts, right? Thinking back to that 6 trait writing model. So POW or POW stands for pick my idea, organize my ideas, write and say more. And this is going to be a really great way to transition from just a fast, quick write everything that comes to your mind in 10 minutes, into a more organized quick write. Remember, our goal is to first get them to write and to enjoy writing. Then we want to help them organize things, organize their thoughts, and make it easy to read, right? We want to help them convey their message. And then we can transition into an even more structured and formal type of writing, and that's where tree comes in. So we have topic sentence, what do I believe or know? Reasons, 3 or more. Explain those reasons and then end it or wrap it up. And this is where students really progress into formal academic writing that is going to allow them more opportunities down the road. When we talk about writing scores, this is the type of method that's going to help students really perform well on written assessments. But setting assessments aside, it's going to provide students with the opportunity to convey their message clearly and to be heard. And that's the purpose of writing. It's also going to allow them to have a greater understanding in reading. And you're going to see cognitive processes just soar through the roof as they get this understanding of writing. So this transition from quick writes to POW plus tree is really going to be beneficial in your classroom. When you have additional students who are still struggling, some other things that you can do is generous reading, which is where you allow students to write down their thoughts, and then you're going to have a conference with them and have them read it to you. And instead of looking at all the conventions and maybe words they spelled wrong or grammatical errors, you're going to think about the overall message. And if they can clearly convey a message, if at the end of the text you understand what they were saying, then you know you have someone who can be a good storyteller. They just need some extra help in certain areas. This task with students will really help you identify maybe where the missing link is. Interactive writing is another really great idea to use with students. It allows them to have a shared activity. You can plan the text. You share a marker, you as the teacher, or even a student who is superior at writing or just enjoys writing can show examples, be a model. And interactive writing is very much like a whole class or a small group thing that can be done in a really fun way and help guide students along. Drawing before writing is a really great way to help students collect their thoughts. And then I really like the fix revising strategy, which allows students to learn the editing process and its importance, right? All good writers have first and second and third drafts before they ever completely revise, edit, and publish. And I think it's important that students know. I know it's important that students learn that one and done is not the way to do writing. There's so much more behind it. So, of course, all of this writing instruction must be paired with motivation and engagement. We need to celebrate writing achievements and progress. We need to come up with innovative ways to encourage writing in our everyday. Bring in adults and have write talks, right? You have book talks, let's have write talks. Bring in adults and allow them to share how they use writing in their everyday. Create a school-wide photo library that encourages creative writing, right? There's photos and encourage students to write a response or maybe a story, a caption for those photos. And the most important thing is to just foster a respectful writing community that encourages children to share and recognize growth and improvement. Celebrate even the smallest improvements. Celebrate the correct use of a period, the correct use of a comma, spelling words right, using words on the vocabulary wall. All of these things need to be celebrated so students understand that they're growing and they're learning and you're proud of them. And the last thing I want to talk about today is writing workshop. So this is how you can also, it's another way to approach writing in your classroom, and it's broken down into phases. It's a really great method to follow to incorporate all of this writing information into your classroom. So phase 1 is going to be the teacher sharing. This is going to be whole group. In front of the classroom, you're going to be using a whiteboard or a large notepad, and you're going to be sharing information and examples in front of the class. You're going to move into a mini lesson. Maybe you're going to pick a component from that 6-trait writing model to focus on today. I've seen examples where teachers focus more on like, oh, the use of word bubbles, or maybe we're going to practice using sentences with lists or descriptive sentences. We're going to practice using adjectives today. whatever it is, it's going to be a mini lesson on that specific thing. It's going to allow you to focus on one of the 6 traits of the writing model. Then you're going to move into phase 3, state of the class. This is interesting. I really enjoy this. It's where the teacher asks each student what they're going to be writing about. What's the topic or the theme? And it really provides students with lots of ideas. So this is an important step that should not be skipped, but also shouldn't take too much time. You're going to move into phase 4, workshop activities, which this is a combination of a couple of different things. The teacher is going to demonstrate sustained, silent writing and reading at this point. Students are going to be writing on their own. They're going to go through different phases of writing, first draft, peer editing, revising, publishing. The teacher is going to move around the room after she or he does their own sustained writing. They're going to see what guidance they need to provide for students. So this is where a lot of the meat happens in your lesson, and it's traditionally going to be about 30 minutes. I feel that it's important to say that you do not have to expand too much further than 30 minutes during this phase. It's okay if they don't get completely done. Publishing doesn't always have to happen. Students can kind of get wore out, and you need to recognize that as a teacher. And then you're going to move on to phase 5, which is the sharing time. And this is a really fun time, but it cannot take up the entire writing workshop allotted time, because you really want to make sure that students are learning to write and practicing to write. And I will say that that's a problem that can arise. Students will want to really focus more on the sharing than the working. And that's something else that we need to be aware of, is students sometimes will want to stay in the peer conference or peer editing stage because they like talking to their classmates. And you might have to get them back on task periodically. So this is our presentation for today. I feel like there's so much more I could have provided. And of course, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to email me at kyohn@usd483. I welcome any questions that you have. And as always, just remember, at the end of the day, as difficult as it can be to teach your students the writing process, it will have infinite impacts on their life in a positive way and help them to become successful adults.